Good morning, everybody. It's a few minutes before 10 on the 21st of July, 2025, and it's a Monday. Yes. And I'm heading to the park, the normal park, as usual. And, of course, there is the favorite bench of everybody that has a backrest. The only one that does. Somebody broke this one other bench, and so they removed it completely. And, it's actually a good and quiet place to do videos or whatever, but I want to see how my luck is going to go today if somebody did not sit on that bench, which they always do. You have to be very lucky, or you got to get up pretty early to get that bench in the mornings. So, okay, what do we got as far as news is concerned? I'll start it off first before I notice that somebody is sitting on that bench, probably as usual. Just days ago, Trump disclosed his plan, of course, to flood Europe with weapons. Oh, lo and behold, somebody is sitting on that bench. Now, how could that possibly be? Other benches, nobody's sitting on them. Somebody always has to sit on this bench. Well, let me switch this thing around here. Right there. Yesterday I saw a guy, I think he had grayish hair. I wanted to see if it was the same person, like camping out on this bench for the entire day or whatever. I don't know. Maybe this is the guy. He was probably sitting here yesterday. Different guy, I don't know. But it's like you just can't get it. So I have to go sit somewhere else or whatever. Maybe see if my little kitty is over here. Kitty friend. Which it doesn't look like it. Anyway, yeah, Trump disclosed his plan, of course, and looks like Merz is coming out and trying to make everybody think that he was tricked. Anyway, these guys are they're all a bunch of jokers anyway, these Western politicians. I don't like to get too close over this direction over there because it gets too close to the road and it gets too noisy. It's just not a good thing to try to find a place because somebody always grabs that bench. It's like they have 3 benches in this park, and everybody goes in on that bench. Well, makes you wonder why they can't get a message, say, well, why don't we put some more benches with backrests? I don't know. In the States, they wouldn't give a damn. Maybe I'll just sit against this tree right over here. I don't know. People think you're some kind of a nut. I'll sit over here. Hopefully there's not going to be people working, making a bunch of noise like they were the past few times on this bench that's getting broken. Okay, but anyway, get back to news here. Yes. In any case, I think that a lot of these people, Merz, you have to keep in mind, Merz, he's a product of the corporations as well. So, and what does that mean? Maybe to a large extent it means deep state as well. If you don't think there isn't a German deep state, there certainly is. It's probably a globalist organization right now. And Merz, of course, was the big agent for BlackRock. And BlackRock, of course, is the richest entity on planet Earth. They're richer than the entire United States government. These guys have trillions and trillions of dollars. And of course a lot of control over the United States government, and Donald Trump included. So, well, there is some noise over there, but just kind of ignore it behind me. You guys probably can't hear that anyhow. Hey, this isn't so bad. I can kick my legs up here. So, talk about the news here. So Donald Trump, he devised his plan where the United States can make some money and keep their hands clean. Oh, we're not giving weapons to Ukraine. That's Europe doing that, of course. And Merz, I don't know. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Russians are really getting fed up with Germany, and they're saying Germany is again returning to what they used to be, like such as in World War I and World War II. Of course, not quite on that scale, but Germany actually in World War I is is a much different history than it was in World War II. You know, Adolf Hitler was definitely imperialistic. He was not everything that they try to make him out to be. He was not trying to kill off all of the Jews. He blamed, of course, the Jews for a lot of things. He didn't like the Jews, thought they were a bunch of tricksters. There's a lot of people today that are the same way. And of course, he tried to help them to get set up in some places like Palestine and ship them there and all that. There was Jewish units in the military, and he had Jews in his administration as well. So it wasn't exactly how they were trying to portray it to the world, at least the West and everything. A lot of these narratives were made up after World War II. And even the United States knew this, and they were trying to stop all this fake stuff about extermination and all that sort of a deal. But anyway, that's another thing, and I don't pay so much attention to that. I know that there's a lot of fake stuff in there, and if you study that and you try to put that out, even in a video or anything like that, you're an apologist for Adolf Hitler. And you know, I guess the most important thing is just to realize that he was an imperialist. He wanted to take over areas. He wanted to Lebensraum for dem deutschen Volk. He wanted to just take over a lot of places and move Germans in there, and thought they were superior. That's obvious that he really did say that. And but it's not any different really than God's chosen people, or the exceptional people that Obama claimed that the Americans were. Well, there's so many of these people, and in truth, a lot of that is really fascist. That is really fascism. It's beyond the economic side of fascism. Of course, it says, you know, government power and corporate money, you know, to run things. And if you look at any sort of a economic system, socialism, capitalism, anything, it all has to do with corporate money and government power anyway. So it's like Mussolini. It's a little bit too simplified and not really exactly that accurate when he said his thing. Anyway, I won't get into that. I talk about it in nearly every video. So Donald Trump, and the whole idea of this thing is not really peace. I don't think that Donald Trump, in truth, cares. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump's ego. And yeah, if he can bring about peace and claim it was him that did it, you know, that's great. But I don't think it is 100% the only thing that he's thinking about. You know, he's thinking, oh, how do I make myself look good by making great deals for the United States? So Donald Trump is Donald Trump driven. And it's very interesting when you try to look at all of these global leaders and you try to analyze them. Well, you know, the question is, what drives them? Zelensky, as we all see, what drives him is money. He wants more money, and Zelensky wants his own personal power. And that, I guess, is how Zelensky has always been. And I guess there's been people that have talked about Zelensky even throughout his career. And Zelensky is, I guess, in some ways, he's not that much different than Donald Trump. So they're very similar. They're power-driven. Donald Trump is maybe a little bit more humanistic than Zelensky. And as we all see, Zelensky has nothing against sacrificing hundreds of thousands, if not by now well over 1 million people in his lust for power. And he's a sneaky guy, as I've already said, you know, and many times he is Uriah Heep. Oh, we're so humble, we're so humble. Oh yes, you are so humble, we're so humble. And at the same time, he's trying to gain control of everything. I don't know, some people even said that he's maybe right in the category of Elon Musk in his wealth. And there's so many ways that these people, they hide their wealth. You know, the Rothschilds, they've kept their wealth secret for well over 100 years. And, you know, do they, like Jacob, I don't know, Jacob Rothschild, is he still alive? I don't know. But a lot of these people, they're into, some people say, the trillions of dollars. And, you know, how do you ever know? Because it's, hidden through these firms like when they talked about the Panama Papers. I don't know the law firms and all these people. And I've mentioned before that I was even given a contact of one of these people, because I don't know if who watches this video, and I don't really want to say what this person did for a living, the one that told me about this, but you know, he was kind of grateful for some things, you know, and I had good conversations with this guy. You know, I guess I can be quite charming at times, you know, Prince Charming. And but anyway, he gave me a contact of this one guy, and this guy, he handles a lot of these millions and billions of dollars for rich people. And he was trying to tell me of some kind of an investment where I could get things very, very cheap, and at one point in time they were going to be worth tremendous amounts of money. So he gave me this guy's contact, and I did kind of contact him, and maybe the money that it would take to make these investments. At that time, of course, I had a lot more money, but I don't even know if it was enough for those sort of assets. I don't even want to talk about it so much, but let me tell you, there are people out there, and these people have these avenues, and it's all to get even richer, you know. David Cameron, the leader of Great Britain, he was exposed on one of those, so I guess that was in the Panama Papers, and they had the Pandora Papers and all this. But of course, that is not the name of these firms that are controlling a lot of this money for these people and trying to keep it secret. But anyway, let's get on to other subjects here. Okay, so Donald Trump, you know, is giving, of course, air defense systems, and I guess the secret is out that the Russians, they know how to get around the Patriot systems, and some people are asking the question. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Alexander Mercouris. He was drawing attention to this, you know, from the Duran, Alexander Mercouris. And, you know, these people put out some good stuff. The two Alexes, Alex and Alexander. A lot of people name Alex in the news, in the truth activist business, I guess. But anyway, Russia can get around all of these things. So it's like, what's the point? What's the point in giving these systems? And then you would start to think, aha, well, Donald Trump knows that, so he's on the side of Russia. You know, you can have all this kind of BS going on anywhere. But anyway, I guess it's probably to protect what's ever left of Ukraine. And I don't know, is it to keep the war going? You know, if you don't give any offensive weapons that can bomb Russia, and you just put up these things, you know, it's also, you know, Ukraine has enough of their own. And of course, this is just enough to just try to keep this war going for as long as possible, to the last Ukrainian, you know. And there's other people, since I was putting it out, I don't know if I originated that or if I got it from some idea, but I was thinking, well, because I told you people of what I was studying back in history, back in those old days, and it's no secret to me that the elite people in the West in general, they hate the Ukrainians. They hate the Ukrainians just as much as they hate the Russians. But the Ukrainians are being used as a tool to kill the Russians. And of course, even at least Lindsey Graham comes out and he admits, you know, that he's very happy to kill Russians. And then you look at like Kaya Kallas, she was putting out in a video, and you can find that as well, just like Lindsey Graham. And she says that they have to find ways to kill more Russian children. And it's no different than what Israel is doing with Palestinians. So, you know, these are really very vicious and cruel and corrupt people. These people, in my opinion, I would call these people the scum of the earth. And they don't give a crap about you either. Trust me, you're nothing but a useless eater as well. You're nothing but a tool. You know, somebody to vote for them at voting time. Other than that, you know, they don't care if you live or die. They don't care a thing about you. You know, they just hate Russians a little bit more. Boy, I don't know. Try to get into the psychological heads of these people. So let's see. But at present time, you know, and I guess it's politically expedient, not socially. Socially is to kill. They don't care if they kill any of even their own people. But politically expedient, of course, is to bleed Russia dry. And that's been the case from the very beginning. And they've even said that. I think they said bleed Russia white. I don't know, but anyway, but to bleed Russia dry. in order to bring about a strategic defeat of Russia. And strategic defeat, of course, that means, of course, what precedes a strategic defeat often comes about from an economic defeat. And of course, it's to deprive Russia of funds. And they were thinking it was a gas station masquerading as a country, and if they just cut off the gas and the oil and all that they can defeat Russia. But you know, maybe a large part of Russia's income is from petroleum sales and gas and things like that, but that's not it. Russia has abundance in a lot of different minerals as well, and apparently they have even rare earth minerals, and of course that doesn't even include what they have gotten from the territory that they've taken from what used to be Ukraine. Actually, what would I say? Taken back that territory, because that Donbass had always belonged to Russia until Vladimir Lenin handed it over to Ukraine. As all of these, not all, but most of these leaders of the Soviet Union, they kept handing more and more and more to Ukraine. You know, very crazy. Like Ukraine in and of itself was just a very small region. I mean, and it was not even a people. It was never a country or nothing. But you know, they spoke this language. It's a dialect of Russian, obviously, just like Belarusian is. And Belarusian and Ukrainian, I guess, are somewhat close. But of course, you know, you had a lot of these movements, and I guess some of them go back even further than Bandera, to say that we are the master race, we are the master people. Jesus was Ukrainian, and all of them, Socrates, all of them. We built the pyramids of Egypt. I've already talked a lot about this stuff. They proclaim that they dug out the Black Sea with their bare hands, even though the region of Ukraine was located far away from the Black Sea. I guess they went across all these other regions and they dug it out with their bare hands, even though it didn't benefit them at all. That makes a lot of sense. I guess that shows how brilliant they must have been. But you know, of course, if you digging out the Black Sea, I don't know, you get 1 million people and it would probably take 1 million years to do that. You know, of course they said that they did it with their bare hands. Maybe they had bulldozers. Maybe this was prehistory. They said ancient Ukrainians, by the way. So maybe that was before they built the pyramids. I have no idea. Maybe they built the Taj Mahal as well. You know, you have to ask the Ukrainians. I don't know what's in their history. And of course they have justification for all of it. Like Russia used to belong to them. And in a sense it kind of did. Kievan Rus was actually the first capital of what became Russia. And of course the first time anybody was called Russians were those from Kiev. The people from Kiev were called the Russians. So kind of a mixed up history, if you ask me. You know, we try to piece it all together and justify it. I guess you can slant it any way you want it. So let's see. But anyway, it's still an undeniable plan of the West. It has been for a long, long time. You can even, like I said, go back hundreds of years, is to collapse Russia. And that's undeniable. So you could have even put it in the mouths of people back hundreds of years ago. The strategic defeat of Russia. But no. It doesn't matter who you talk to or what they say. The plan is the same. Always has been. So, and the problem with this plan, I guess maybe with this new Donald Trump one, is who's going to pay for the weapons? I think, who was it? I guess the spokesman for Vladimir Putin, I think it was Dmitry Peskov, he was saying, you know, who's going to pay for the feast? You know, it's like you go out to a restaurant and say, who picks up the tab? You know, and in certain ways, you saw Ursula von der Leyen, you know, the commissioner of the EU, and you saw the Secretary General Rutte, you know, who used to be the, I guess, Prime Minister of Holland. And all of these jokers, you know, and they're all talking about, you know, to the last Ukrainian, as long as it takes, as much money as it takes, anything. Ukraine must be victorious, even though they have no chance, but they must be victorious against Russia. And, gosh, what a bunch of idiots. And, you know, who picks up this bill? And you know, they've all given this indication that they are more than willing to do this, but, you know, these hundreds of billions of dollars. Ursula von der Leyen, hey, what is it, $648 billion. I think that was the number. And of course, of that money, you know, of course, you know, Donald Trump steps in and says, well, hey, buy some American weapons. We have the greatest weapons in the planet that Earth has ever, that the whole entire universe has ever seen, has ever experienced and never experienced. Ours are the greatest, even though they're burning in Ukraine. You know, the Abrams tanks, extremely heavy. They need fueling all the time, all kinds of problems. Anyway, forget all that stuff. But that's the greatest, and of course he thought, of course, all these people will want to buy. Like, it's like the, what was it, the F-57? I don't even want to pay attention anymore. What is this airplane that they never seem to get to work right after, what, 20 years of development? I don't know. The F-16, I think, is still rated. I think even the F-22, you know, is also rated still a better aircraft than this stealth F-57 that the Houthi was able to shoot down at least 2 of them. So after that, of course, after they defeat Russia, of course, then China is next on the list. Do you think China knows that? I think they do. What is it? The friend of my enemy is my best friend. Anyway, it's kind of like Mexico will pay for the wall. Europe will pay for the EU. Wait a minute. The NATO EU will pay for all the weapons. So, what the heck's going on? Somebody whistling back there? Ah, there goes the noise back here. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I wonder if that bench is free. People camp out, like I said, on that bench. Sometimes they stay there for the entire day, I think. Yep, that guy is still there. I think it might be the same guy. He probably spends hours there. People, it's like they live there. I don't know. Don't they have a home to go to? Anyway. So. But, as I said, NATO, Rutte, he basically was saying, he was broadcasting long before this, that he would love the idea of paying for all these weapons. And these people are all so gung-ho to get the Russians. Damn them anyway. Damn those Russians. Now all of a sudden, oh, well, we don't have the money. Italy, oh, we don't have the money. France, oh, we don't have the money. We'll send our troops. We'll watch our people die. I'm glad, very happy to make our people die, but we don't have any money to pay for all these weapons from the U.S. I think the Czech Republic, they were also gung-ho against getting the Russians. I think, Norway is also involved in that. But I don't know. I'm sure a lot of these people, they just don't have the money. Well, they say they don't have the money. I think Norway does have a lot of money. I think they are actually quite a rich nation. I think they do not have much or any debt. Depends on what you call debt, I guess. So, but anyway. Yeah. But anyway, they don't want to participate in this problem for certain reasons. You can already guess that Slovakia, they don't want to participate. Robert Fico, the leader of Slovakia, and Viktor Orban of Hungary, they would have told you already a year ago they want nothing to do with any of this stuff. So I don't know, there's these other countries, and they're trying, of course, Moldova, they would jump right in, and the Baltics, the Chihuahua states, oh, they would love it. You better not attack Russia without having us come in involved in that too. So, I guess that's turning on and turning off. Why are they looking at me? And this guy here on the bench giving me the eye as well. Saying, this is my bench. You get lost, go find your own bench. This guy's saying, you know what I should do? I should go sit down next to him and sit there and, disturb his peace. It's like a public bench, Be kind of a... I don't know, I can't say that word on YouTube probably. Anyway, so if they're going to go till the last Ukrainian, well, who is going to be? I was always wondering, well, who's going to be the last Ukrainian? Is it going to be Zelensky? Is it going to be Budanov? Makes you really wonder who runs the show there. Sometimes I think Budanov, or maybe it's a conglomeration of a bunch of other Nazis. Yeah. Zelensky is a pretty tricky guy. He might have gained control over all of these jokers at one point in time. So now he's looking at me again like, oh, maybe I can sit there instead of having this thing. What the hell? Why can't I go anywhere in Belarus? They're always building something somewhere, making a bunch of noise, people hogging the benches, you know. Anyway, it's better just to walk around in a whole bunch of on the crowded streets in downtown in the middle of Minsk, I guess, because then you're kind of anonymous. Okay. So, the EU is already going broke. Germany, and of course Germany, I guess they're promising to pay for these weapons. Alice Weidel of the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland party, which is the most popular party, and of course they suppressed them in the election to make sure that they would not become the ruling party of Germany, and of course they'll probably do that again. You know, you cannot deny the fact that there isn't a deep state. There certainly is a deep state in Germany, and maybe it's a global deep state. Maybe a lot of this has to do with BlackRock. I have no idea, you know. I don't know if anybody knows all the answers to all of this stuff. George Soros, how much does he contribute to this? It's really crazy stuff. Anyway, somebody is pulling the puppet strings, and we are just the tools, the rest of us normal Joes on the street, unfortunately. And you know, and all we can do is sit back and observe and maybe put out some facts, and maybe we'll have somebody that one day steps up to the plate. We thought it was going to be Donald Trump, but Donald Trump, I don't know. He seems to have some kind of a different agenda. What it is, I don't know. I don't think he's trying to trick any of these people. It looks like Donald Trump has been either won over or whatever. You know, when you have a family, get this, and this is very obvious. You guys are not stupid idiots. I don't know, some of these people in the Democrats might be. But you say you have a big family like Donald Trump, and you have to have the right people come up to you and say, oh, we don't want to see what happens to your daughter's children, you know, when the blah, you know, and you cannot, I don't know, unless Donald Trump can get himself together like 600, 700 security to follow his people all over the place, all of his family and all that sort of a deal. Some things can happen to you. Look, they even shot at Donald Trump 2 times. So, do you think it's going to be easier or more difficult to get at grandchildren of Donald Trump? Not a very difficult question. So, you know, you know, you do what we tell you to do, and everything's going to be all right, right? Sad, sad, sad. You know, instead of trying to make sure that a president, you know, in the old days, it used to be the president pretty much had to be a Protestant. They had to be married. They had to have a family, or else they weren't really going to be allowed, apparently, to be president. Along with all these other things, you have to be more than 35 years old. You have to be born on American soil. Blah, 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 blah. But you start to look at Vladimir Putin. He's not married. As far as I know, he's not gay. You don't hear about anything about Vladimir Putin's personal life. A lot of people, they don't even talk about the fact that Vladimir Putin, I guess he graduated there in his, St. Petersburg State University, whatever the heck that place is called, in law, and he was already working and in, in politics and things like that after a lot of his career. And later on, he got a degree in economics, and he has proven himself to be very brilliant in economics. So I think I would trust Vladimir Putin's economics more than I would trust some of these jokers, let alone Donald Trump's economics. Tariffs, baby, tariffs, that's where it's at. That's where it's all rocking in at. But anyway, let me just keep going here. I get on these sidetracks here. Let's see. So the EU will continue to go broke. You know, they'll probably start looking in washing machines to get some computer chips to make drones to send to Ukraine. But actually, Vladimir Zelensky, his dream is to be making drones for the United States and all that. But you know, as I put out in a lot of other videos, a lot of people, they don't seem to want to emphasize this, but Ukraine has a lot of drones. They make a lot of drones. Russia has their hands full always bombing the factories of Ukraine making drones. But the biggest thing, and as even Elon Musk has noticed, present and the future of warfare is drones, baby. Drones, 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 drones. And Russia has recently also started to increase more drones. And Russia has been finding ways to have more control with drones and to maneuver drones and things like that. And a lot of that stuff that what they were saying, I think was a year ago, oh, that Iran is giving drones to Russia. And of course there's no truth in that, and never has been, except for at the very beginning, before the special military operation began. Russia got some drones from Iran, and a lot of what they did is they, I guess you would say, reverse engineered them. Maybe they even got help from Iran, and they made their own. There's these Jiran too, and they were Russian drones all the time. They were not like Iranian drones, but it was just, I guess, I don't know, Zelensky, of course, wants to go after Iran too. Zelensky's probably a partner in crime with Israel. I think they're somehow linked. You know, and it doesn't have that much to do with the fact of being Jewish, because a lot of Israelis, they hate Zelensky. They say he's not Jewish and all that. Well, how could you be Jewish when you back the Azov battalion and the Right Sector and all these other people who their biggest plus to themselves is that they hate Jews? So anyway, it's a strange world. So yes, Mexico will pay for the wall. Europe's going to pay for the drones. I don't know. Zelensky wants to sell drones to the US, and the United States is actually watching and learning and studying how to do the, you know, greater drone warfare. Unfortunately, a lot of their drones are too expensive at the moment, but they're working on it. They're working on it. Okay. So let's see. In all of this, you all have to realize, you do realize, but you know, you have to verbalize this, that Zelensky, what is his master plan? You know, why would you be sending hundreds of thousands, even a lot of people say well over 1 million people, 1 million men have died, you know, being shoved to the front lines as cannon fodder to get blown to pieces by Russian artillery. If not blown to pieces, I don't know, some of them definitely were blown to pieces. And, you know, not really bat an eyelid, you know. Zelensky doesn't give a crap, I mean, and everybody knows that. So what would be the plan? Of course, Zelensky, if he does want to do more than just become fabulously rich and scoop up billions and billions and billions and properties all over the world for himself, you would think that he would have some other sort of a deal. And of course, it shows that his big dream is to get the United States into the war as well, to start a world war. And I think Donald Trump and even a lot of strategists in the United States, they know that they cannot beat Russia in Europe. If there was even a major war, just say that it ever did get to Germany. I think the very truth of this matter is, I think when even the United States, Donald Trump included, by the way, in spite of all of his bragging and his lies and his exaggerations and, you know, how Donald Trump is, I think he realizes that it would be very disastrous to have a war against Russia in Europe, especially at this time. And Russia has got a lot of momentum right now. They've got a lot of people trained in making weapons. It's a huge industry right now. And I've even thought myself, maybe if I want to get a job, very good paying job, move to Ekaterinburg. You know, that's where that Wall Street Journal spy was sent, and Russia had him, you know, locked up for quite a while because he was spying on Russia's military-industrial complex. He, you know, he's a part-time Wall Street Journal reporter as well as a spy, and of course he was caught. You know, getting material. I don't know if they set him up or whatever, but remember they caught him red-handed getting top secret material in Ekaterinburg, you know, and that's the area where they make a lot of the weapons, of course, for. Makes you wonder, why isn't Ukraine bombing that area? I don't know if it's well protected or not. But anyway, that's in the Ural Mountains and maybe a couple other cities around there. But anyway, let's keep going. That wasn't part of what I was going to say. So Zelensky, he's mostly just holding out. He's holding out and trying to figure out a way to somehow get the United States involved in the war, and he will coast to victory, he believes. And the United States doesn't even believe that, but Zelensky does. So that lets you know how bad things are right now for Ukraine. Maybe he thinks that, you know, that, what was that little thing that Trump was saying to nuke Moscow or whatever. That guy's still sitting on the bench. Maybe he thinks that Trump is actually serious, you know. And I put out when Donald Trump actually did say that, Donald Trump wasn't serious, obviously. That he's going to destroy Moscow. He was, I think, even talking about while he was president, and Vladimir Putin, you don't dare attack Ukraine, even though there was no mention of it, no plans, no indications whatsoever. What did Donald Trump just come up to? If you ever attack Ukraine, that I will destroy Moscow. Donald Trump is lying. Donald Trump is flat out lying. You know, Donald Trump, he's the victim of lies, but Donald Trump comes up with his own lies when nothing can be proven. He probably knows. I tell you what, if you were to ask Vladimir Putin, he's going to say he doesn't remember any kind of a conversation like that. It's something like that you would definitely remember. Oh, I'm going to bomb and destroy Moscow if you attack Ukraine. In other words, it was never said at all. Okay. But let's keep going here. A lot of these weapons supplies, and I guess Russia has also put out that the question is, you know, if there is going to be these big massive upload of weapons sent to Ukraine. He didn't say Donald Trump sending the weapons to Europe, but maybe there's something else implied here. They said the question is what Russia's response would be. And of course, it would not be a good one for those European countries that are sending long-range weapons to Ukraine to be used against Russians. And they've already hinted, and think some people have even come right out and said, I don't know if it's the right people, the more influential, the ones that actually have say, they have said that they will be bombing these factories and things that are putting out these weapons. So, yes, NATO is getting dangerously close to a direct clash with Russia. That is pretty much what Russia has been saying as well. And Merz, he goes back, vacillates one side to the next. He's going to send long range. He isn't. But remember at the very beginning, Friedrich Merz has put out that he wants to covertly be sending weapons to Ukraine. So I guess that's part of his personality. If he put that out at the very beginning when he became chancellor, or maybe it was before he became chancellor, so you can maybe expect something like that. It's only a matter of time, I believe. The escalation escalator, as Alexander Mercouris says. Okay. And it's very, very obvious, and this is a major sign that NATO is taking over the Baltic. They are definitely taking over the Baltic Sea. They're trying to turn this into a NATO lake, as the term has been used. And this, what is it, Gotland? It's an island that by treaty it is to stay demilitarized, and they're just flooding it with weapons like you would never believe. And it's just about like Finland. They signed a treaty, I guess, with Russia never to militarize, to stay neutral, you know, and it makes you wonder, why in the world, if you are a neutral country and you can trade and do anything you want with Europe, you can trade and do anything you want with Russia, you know, you're not a party to this. By international law, why in the heck would you vacillate to one side? And now you're ruining your economy. Tourism has dropped massively, and that's a big, Russian tourism into Finland was very big, and now I guess it's pretty much stopped. So these are a bunch of idiots, even in Finland. I guess it's a, what do they call that? Idiocracy, I guess, throughout all of Europe anyway. For the most part in the United States also. Canada. I don't know, how far can you go with how many idiots there are in the world? You know, and I'm actually kind of grateful, like I say, to be in Belarus, where, you know, when they make decisions here, you can see why they make the decisions, and they all make sense. Just like Russia, when they make a decision, it makes sense. But when they're making decisions in the West, it doesn't make any sense. You know, and like I said, and has been put out by Russia, Putin has said this himself, and I guess Lavrov has said that the West, I don't know if they said the United States or the West, they go to war for resources, in other words, money, and Russia goes to war for people. So everything is people-based, and it makes you really wonder if there's ever going to be a time when the people, the leadership in the West, actually starts thinking about their people, rather than just thinking about their money and their power and their everything that's connected to that. So, anyhow, so the Baltic Lake, and obviously, as you all know, that is to be used at some points in time to destroy, deter anything Russian shipping, means commercial shipping more than anything else, rather than even the military shipping. But Russia also has some submarines. The United States, Donald Trump bragging about the submarines of the United States, the most powerful weapons in all of history, which in a certain extent that's very true. But Russia has some things very similar to that, maybe even better. I don't know. I'm not a weapons expert. You might have to look for, what's his name, Brian Berletic. He might know. Or what's his name, Martynov. I haven't seen these guys' videos for a long time. I should see if they're still active. Okay. But anyway, NATO has put out that their desire is to go to war with Russia by 2030, and some are saying even as early as 2029. That is their goal. Their goal is a war with Russia. Can you imagine? But, you know, obviously, they have to try to make Russia start the war, at least to look like Russia is starting the war. You know, and they go beyond provocations. You know, when they're going to start to bomb Russia, when German soldiers are going to be sitting in Ukraine, sending bombs to bomb inside of Russia, that's beyond a provocation. That's actually going to war with Russia. That is initiating a war with Russia. And they think Russia's going to say, oh, that's not quite bad enough yet. I don't think so. So you got, what is this? Rutte, the Secretary General, former leader of Holland. He's now Secretary General. And you got Lindsey Graham, you got Zelensky, and they're praying for a war. Ursula von der Leyen is another one. You got Merz. I think he's probably praying for that too. And Kaya Kallas. You know, all these people, they just mostly want to kill Russians, as they've already, all of them, come out and said that. And then Tulsi Gabbard. What about Tulsi Gabbard? Where does she come in on this? She doesn't want to see this war, obviously. Tulsi Gabbard, in her own way, she's probably trying to expose some of these preconditions that started this war. And as you all know, she came out and she has exposed undeniable, 100% undeniable evidence that Barack Obama is a real corrupt bastard, and so are all of these people. Brennan, Clapper, James Comey. He's already, these guys, these people, at the very least, they need to be in prison for a long time. And nobody is above the law. Who said that? Oh, that was Obama that said that. Probably all these people said that. But that does not include them, I guess, you know. I think, who was it? Trump, I guess he put out a video showing Barack Obama saying, no one is above the law. And Obama was using that against Donald Trump when Donald Trump had not disobeyed the law. You know, I'm sure Donald Trump has disobeyed the law on a number of occasions, maybe a little bit less, but not as big as Obama himself, you know. Who was it? The drone president. Jeez. These are really, we have to get in the light, otherwise it's going to look real bad here. These are real dastardly bastards, I tell you what, all of these politicians are in the West. So, but Tulsi Gabbard, she's trying to go along to get along. And if she doesn't, if she gets ousted, you know, she's never going to be in a position to do anything for humanity anyway. But even Donald Trump is really praising Tulsi Gabbard, which is a very good thing. He's loving all this stuff that she's exposing, this mass corruption, this terrible, terrible corruption and this whole thing by Barack Obama. And of course, Hillary Clinton, she's involved in this too. We can't forget Hillary. Jeez. And if you really think about this stuff, this is some of the most earth-shattering news, this exposure of actual treason by the President of the United States to unseat Donald Trump, to subvert the will of the American people that put Donald Trump, to subvert democracy. I think that's exactly what Tulsi Gabbard said, and that's exactly what it is. So, you know, if they want to talk about democracy while they're trying to destroy democracy, just like the European Union, I don't know, how can you even make these, how can a guy make these videos, you know, when they don't like who Romania voted in, this Kalin Georgescu, so they get the court system to nullify the elections because they didn't like who the people voted for. And it's just like what's going on in Georgia, and they're still working on Georgia big time. Wow. Hello. Anyway, so Tulsi Gabbard, good luck. I predict Obama will not see one day in jail. The most corrupt people, they never go to jail. Cheating on elections no matter what. And me, even with all my bad mouthing of Donald Trump, it's not per se everything about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for the most part, he's a corrupt guy too. He's just not as corrupt as Obama was. Maybe even George Bush. I don't know. I don't know everything about Donald Trump either, but he's at least really has done some good things for people. I don't think Obama really ever has. Obama's just nothing but a charlatan liar and a corrupt guy as well. Real con artist. That's what I don't like, is con artists. Justin Trudeau, Barack Obama, con artist masters. Even a bigger master of con artistry. Donald Trump is a manipulator. And maybe he's a con artist in that way as well. I don't know. I don't like people trying to fool you and think that you're really stupid, or even making you look stupid when you find out that you were tricked by these guys. Anyway. So let's keep going. It's going to be difficult anyway to get any kind of a president that puts humanity before greed and hate and domination and whatever the heck these guys are all for. Adam Schiff, I guess he's been caught also. Adam Schiff, remember him? He's one of the big Democrat guys, you know. Shifty Schiff, I guess is what Donald Trump calls him. You know, really corrupt guy as well. There's nothing but corrupt people, you know. So what did Schiff do? I guess he falsified documents to get a loan, I guess, maybe on some multi-million-dollar property. All these guys are millionaires. A lot of times when they come into Congress, you know, they're pretty wealthy, but then they become multi-millionaires while they're in Congress. I wonder how that happens. So anyway, Shifty Schiff, that guy should go to prison too then. So. Small lady with her doggies. So Zelensky, what is going on now with Zelensky lately? He's trying to, I don't even know what his impetus for this is, but of course it's not going to work. He's trying to trick Vladimir Putin into having some sort of a one-on-one meeting, and of course he wants the press there. He wants to use a bunch of tricks, and you know, Zelensky is a real trickster. And to try to make Putin look bad, like he's the aggressor, you know. And I tell you what, if I would like to do that, I would really like to do that. And I would like to say, I would just keep on driving the point home. So you killing Russian people in the Donbass for 8 years, we're not supposed to see that, right? You know, nobody's supposed to be preventing anybody from doing that. It's just an act of kindness, right? To unite them with God much earlier than I guess they normally would than by death of natural causes, you know. And your Azov Nazis killing children and taking over schools, using children as human shields, things like that. and then faking the Bucha massacre. Zelensky was heavily involved in that himself. So he's more corruption. But Zelensky he's undeniably, he's probably more corrupt than even Shifty Schiff, maybe even Obama. I don't know. And Zelensky, he's continuing his drone strikes on Moscow. I don't know if any people have been died. They shoot down a lot of these drones, and of course the wreckage of the drones, they come down and they damage things as well. So, but they are killing people like the drones. It's just as much like every single day Israel is bombing things, not only in Gaza but also in the West Bank, maybe even Lebanon, Syria. They had heavy bombings of Syria. Supposedly there's some kind of a treaty signed. Let's see how long that lasts, how many days. It's just like the one in Lebanon. It never lasted. As a matter of fact, the day they signed it, they kept on bombing, and they just had much less bombing, killing and destruction. And then of course they kind of officially got out when they did some massive bombing against Lebanon. I can't keep track of all of Netanyahu's bombings. I think some people are putting out that there's people in the United States government also putting out how crazy this guy is and bombing Catholic churches and Americans and everything like that. So, oh, it was a mistake. Oh, it was a stray bomb or something like that. Yeah. So anyway, the last 2 days, I guess Zelensky's been bombing Russia. I think it was 98 drones yesterday, and I think 13 of them were launched on Moscow. And I don't know exactly for sure. And of course Donald Trump ignores all of this. He doesn't seem to see. He only sees that what he thinks and what people tell him, that Putin was bombing even after he's talking very nice. He never said that Putin said he's not going to continue with this special military operation. And as everybody knows, as soon as Putin stops, Ukraine is going to move right in and move troops in. In other words, it's just going to continue this to make it go longer and longer and longer. And Donald Trump's not a military guy anyway. Maybe he plays like he's really, really stupid in a lot of that stuff. I don't know if he is that stupid or he just plays to be stupid. So people are still sending aid to Gaza. One of the ships, they sabotaged it. I think it looked like a wooden ship. I saw just some film footage of it, and people like us sending a lot of food and all that, and somebody, they sabotaged it. They wrapped a rope around the propeller shaft, and of course what would happen, it would cause the engine to freeze up, and of course it would melt down the engine. You'd need a whole new engine practically. The whole block would have to be replaced if you do something like that. It would overheat it. And they also poisoned the water supply, sulfuric acid, whatever that might be. I remember hearing what that is. I'm terrible in chemistry. I told you already that. So anyway, I'm terrible in chemistry. Sulfuric acid. Anyway, they put that in the water supply, and luckily they found this stuff, and they were able to resupply themselves, get that rope off of there, and to head out, and they're on their way, I guess, to Gaza right now. Wow. Yes, and let me get back to what I was kind of mentioning before. Because the EU, they didn't like Georgia's election results, concerning the Foreign Agents Act, just like what I was saying about Romania. They didn't like who won, so they get that nullified. And of course it didn't work really in Georgia. Georgia is a little bit more independent, I guess, than Romania. So they could overthrow this in Romania, but they didn't. They're trying to end this Foreign Agents Act that Georgia used, and they were trying to stop it as much as they can. They've spent millions of dollars, sent protesters there, and were really, really working on it, and the whole 9 yards, and destroying property and riots and things like that. But it still passed, and now they're threatening Georgia again. They're doing everything. I guess this is very much essential because they want a two-front war against Russia. So, and of course, this, like I already mentioned in the beginning of this video, the long-term goal, and I'm talking long-term, I'm talking hundreds of years, is to destroy Russia, and it always has been. So this is just what is going on right now, and what we're watching is just the latest events from things that have been going on for hundreds of years. It really makes you wonder, is there some kind of a wizard or something that lives for hundreds of years that he's behind all of this stuff or whatever? That guy's still camped out on that bench over there. Look at that. That's absolutely incredible. There's no way that, as a matter of fact, he looks like he might even be sleeping. Is he looking at his cell phone or sleeping? I have no idea. If I want to sit on that bench, I probably got to get up pretty damn early in the morning to get that bench. But, no. I think, as a matter of fact, I did sit there one time, and this guy was probably going back and forth, pissed off that I took his home. But anyway, let me see what's going on. There's a young guy. I think he's maybe sitting on that bench again. He was there yesterday. I'm gonna go walk over there just to see if these people, it's like this, if it's like their territory and they get these benches or something. I'm really curious, you know. Sorry about that, people. I'm curious about a lot of things. Some of this stuff is just fascinating, you know, like this guy getting his bench over here instead of me getting my bench. Anyway, I'm gonna see if this young guy is the same guy over here. I went jogging and I come back, he's still on this bench. And anyway, there's a lady on this bench, but I don't know anything about her, but that's the next bench over there. Let me see. Okay, but anyway, this Georgia stuff, and you all know that the United States, the United States and Israel and all those were trying to take Georgia back in 2008. They tried to trick Russia then, and it wasn't Georgia. They already had Georgia at that time, believe it or not. But I guess powers that be already made Georgia independent at this time. But they were trying to take South Ossetia, which adjoins, and at one time was a part of Georgia, I guess, during the Soviet Union time, but they got their independence, just like a lot of things were pretty messed up, I guess, after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, and things like that happened, blah, 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 blah. So, but what the European Union is really pissed off about is they want this, they don't want this Foreign Agents Act because they wanted to send NGOs in there. And it was very much like what Putin was doing. He was kicking out NGOs out of Russia because these NGOs, they control the country. They get their people in, they bring a lot of money in and things like that. They pay, and they pay for protesters. They train people to protest, all sorts of things. Really, really shocking stuff. And Georgia doesn't want that. And obviously, the EU would say, well, that has nothing to do with us. But no, it does, because they want to control Georgia, and if they can get rid of this law, they can control it for all time. And in the last elections, as you know, there was a lady. She is of Georgian descent, but essentially she was French, and she was running to get the control of Georgia, and she was assigned as a president, which was only like a figurehead at that time. It's sort of like the president of Germany, who is not the leader of Germany. The leader is the chancellor, as you know. And but anyway, this lady was French, and she was put in power long ago by Saakashvili, who was a U.S. puppet, and everybody knows that, a big U.S. puppet. You know, before he was kicked out of there, then he went to Ukraine. He became the mayor of Odessa. Then he got kicked out of Ukraine. And then he went back to Georgia, and then they put him in prison. So he's in prison now, you know, for doing corrupt things. These are really corrupt people. You know, another Yale graduate. You know, most of these guys seem to come from, and girls, they come from Yale. I don't know. It's a big corruption school. American School of Corruption, I guess, is Yale. But anyway, no, there's this bench, but the guy is not sitting there. So these are other people. Anyway, let's see. So, the EU, probably through Ursula von der Leyen, the wicked witch of the north up there, she's saying that they're going to cut off visa travel for Georgians unless, for example, they repeal that act. They're coming up with a whole bunch of lofty things, like unless they allow democracy, which is not democracy, which is dictatorial authoritarianism of the EU, you know, which they call democracy in the EU. Unless they, in other words, Georgia has to give up their sovereignty to the EU, you know, in other words, give up freedom to the EU, in favor of the EU before they're going to be allowed in the EU and before people are going to be able to continue traveling to the EU. Wow. And anyway, and of course they're going to continue the block of them having the possibility of going into the EU unless Georgia does what the EU tells them to do. In other words, the EU believes they are already in control of Georgia, and they will enact punishments against Georgia unless Georgia does what the EU tells them to do. I guess that's called sovereignty, right? That means that Georgia is a sovereign country. It's incredible. They're not even in the EU, and yet they seek to be in control of Georgia. Isn't that something? It's just mind-boggling. It sounds like the United States. If it were me and I was Georgia, I would say, well, why in the crap would we want to become part of an organization like you, that leads us around by the nose and is nothing but an authoritarian dictatorship that will take all of our sovereignty away? That's what I would say if I was in Georgia. I would say, here, take the little finger, get the frick out of here. We don't want nothing to do with you guys. Get lost. Anyway, and we're going to join Russia is what I would say. Anyway. Oh, at the same time, Azerbaijan. I was talking about Azerbaijan. As we all know, Pashinyan, the leader of Armenia, he is actually drifting over, and I just kind of have a suspicion that he was compromised in some way to join the West and to abandon any sort of a friendship with Russia and become enemies with Russia. But it looks like the Azeris, Azerbaijan, is the same way. Now that's going to be a little bit of a tricky thing, but he was already, the leader of Azerbaijan was getting some sort of presence from Ukraine, so they're wooing them, they're courting them. They're courting Azerbaijan as well. And I guess if the United States, well, the West in general, gets control of Azerbaijan and Armenia, I tell you what, that is very, very, very bad for Russia, and it's very bad for Iran, and it's exactly what the US and Europe wants. They're working together as a team. So I'll tell you what, there might be some sparks flying there. And they actually don't even like each other, Armenia and Azerbaijan, but they're going to be both set against Russia and Iran. It's going to be something. There's going to be something going on there. And Serbia, they're still really, really working on Serbia, the West. They're really trying to punish them and overthrow that government too. So this is some really heavy stuff. I don't know if Russia's going to have to start getting overt instead of covert and trying to maintain a friendship with these countries and trying to allow them to have their freedom of choice and all. But of course, as we all know, that the West already had control of Georgia, and now Georgia, at least for the time being, is a sovereign country. Who knows how long they can hold out before, it was, I guess, after this breakout of the special military operation and wanting to put Russia involved in a two-front war. I guess maybe that had really motivated the West to say, we really got to get Georgia. And now they really got to get Armenia. They really got to get maybe Azerbaijan. So Russia, they might have to really start moving their backside. Move your ass! I mean, get their backsides going here. I don't know. It's just the EU. I mean, and the United States saying, you must let us control your country. We will control your country. And if you don't, there's going to be a punishment involved. So that's what it's all about, as you all can see. Okay, anyway, that's about all for this video. Over an hour. Oh man, that means it's probably not going to be uploaded for, gosh, whatever time it is now, maybe 10:15 or no, about 10:30. It's probably about 10:30 in the morning. That means it's probably not going to be uploaded till like 6 this evening. As you know, YouTube loves me, and they quicken my videos. They make sure that it takes 10 hours. I was talking to somebody just a few days ago, and he said they did sometimes video for 3 hours, and it took 20 minutes to upload that. They thought that was too long. Boy, that would be 3 hours. Sometimes I do 40-minute videos, and it takes 20 hours to upload it. Boy, that's incredible. Anyhow. that's all I have for right now, and I thank you guys for joining me. And yes, I still got to do that coffee video, and like I said, I haven't even started doing that. I got to put something together, tell you about my little coffee career when I was in the Caribbean. I'll do that because I kind of want to do that too. So it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. I got to put in a lot of pictures and things like that. I'm not a very good master of making videos and things like that. I use these programs and it takes even longer. Okay, but anyway, thanks for joining me, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye bye.